Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another episode of Gun Floor Questions. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what not to do as a customer in a gun store. So before all you guys start hating on other things that employees should not do behind a gun counter, don't worry, I will be making another video in the series coming up soon on what gun floor associates should not do at a gun floor. So as you guys know, if you've been following my channel at all, I do work behind a gun counter. So that is my only job that I have currently, along with being a full-time student. And I've been in the firearm industry now for about 2 years, actually working in the industry itself. So I have seen a lot. I've worked at a couple of different gun stores. Let's start our list off with the number one thing you should not do as a customer in a gun store. Unholster your current concealed carry weapon because you want the employee to take a look at it or see if you could sell it or get work done on it or anything like that. So don't be that guy who says, hey, can you take a look at this, real quick and pull out the gun. I'm wearing sweatpants right now, so my holster comes right out with it, but you get the point. Don't reach around, pull your gun out. Main reason, and it's kind of a no-brainer to me, but I guess not to a lot of customers, we don't know if that gun is chambered, if it's loaded, not loaded, and honestly, not to kind of judge that person, but I don't know your skill level. I don't know if you just got that gun yesterday and you have no idea how to operate it, and all of a sudden I get shot for some stupid reason. But on top of that, you have to realize that you're in a gun store, and maybe not in a less free state, but in a state like Pennsylvania, I would say that probably 80% of the customers and the employees, more like 99% of the employees, are currently carrying themselves. So I don't know, and a lot of customers don't know around them that that can't hear the conversation if all of a sudden I'm being held up and it's some sort of a robbery. It's really just not a good idea at all to unholster your weapon. The best thing that you can do is simply go out to your vehicle, unload the weapon, bring it back in a box, or if you don't have a box, that's fine, but check it in up at the front counter. Generally, at any gun store you go to, they'll want you to check it in somewhere before you bring it to the gun counter. But if all else fails, guys, just ask what to do before you just go ahead and pull it out. So that's the number one thing you should not do, and I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. The second thing on our list is going to be, don't point the muzzle of the gun towards me. It's a really frustrating thing on the gun counter that I see way too much, and that's going to simply be, obviously, you're going to look at the gun, you don't know, you've never really looked at a gun before, and the first thing you do is finger on the trigger, point the gun directly at my face. And this is a really frustrating thing, guys, and I think it's really more just misinformation. A lot of people just think, oh, they checked it, obviously it's unloaded, it shouldn't matter. But again, guys, that just shows us that you have no idea about the fundamental safety rules of firearms. And the fact that you take any sort of a firearm and point it at somebody's face, really disconcerting. And it makes me, as a gun floor associate, not really want to sell you a gun that you're just flashing me and everybody else in the store with the muzzle. So that's a huge thing, guys. If you're going to get a firearm, you're going to look at it and take it out of the case, just be courteous. Know the firearm rules before, and that is just don't ever point a gun, loaded or unloaded, at anything you don't want to destroy. That's one of the commandments. So simply just either take it out of the case and point it at the floor, or point it at the wall behind the gun store associate without getting anywhere near him. If the gun floor associate's here, just simply point the gun over to the right a little bit or to the left a little bit, not at anybody, and that's going to be the best way that you can do that. The third thing here, this is going to be, don't interrupt a gun floor associate while he's talking to the current customer that he's talking to. This is a really big one, guys. This really kind of gets on my nerves, and how a scenario that has happened to me multiple times is I'll be telling a customer about something, I'll be showing them a gun, telling them kind of opinions behind it, what they should look at, what they shouldn't look at, and all of a sudden some random customer will kind of butt into the conversation, say, oh no, you need this gun. And it's generally something that's super opinionated and probably 8 times out of 10 a completely wrong statement. And what tends to happen is the customer will kind of look at them and be like, oh, okay, and think that that's right. And it creates a really awkward situation because I have to tell them the accurate information, and this person just told them something completely wrong, completely opinionated. And I have to wait till they kind of go away and say, well, that's not accurate, and hope that they don't hear it and come back and start an argument. It's a really frustrating situation. The only time ever that I would recommend doing this is if you're very, very knowledgeable yourself and you go into a gun store and you hear wrong information getting put out by an employee and it's wrong information. And then just simply kind of excuse yourself into the conversation, and just, voice your opinion really nicely. But honestly, most of the time, guys, unless you absolutely know it's wrong information, don't butt into the conversation. Just don't do it. So the fourth thing that we're going to talk about is skipping in line. This, a lot of the times, isn't the customer's fault. Sometimes I've worked at gun stores before where there's no really formal like line. Like everybody just kind of walks up to the counter and you get served when you get served. This system is awful, and most of the time people get jumped over in line all the time accidentally because they simply don't know somebody was ahead of them. But at the gun store that I work at now, and at many others out there, we actually have a system that you put in your name in a tablet, and it'll come up on a TV screen the exact list of people, when you're next, who's being served currently, and it's an awesome system. So whenever you go into a gun store, look for something like that. Look for some sort of number system, taking a number, and if all else fails, just kind of ask. At some, kind of low-key mom-and-pop gun shops, it might not have anything, but just simply ask, were you first, were you ahead of me, and so on, and just really be polite and courteous. And again, at the end of the day, just don't cut in line. Know that if you're going to a gun store, especially during the holidays, we're getting closer to an election here, it's gonna be busy, guys. So be prepared to wait a pretty long time. I mean, at a busy gun store, you could be waiting, an hour to 45 minutes to an hour at least. So don't be the person, that if all else, you're waiting in line, your number's waiting to be called, and just butt in line and say, hey man, you need to help me right now. Everybody waits, just be courteous, be polite, and just take a number and wait in line. The fifth thing we're going to talk about is dry firing. So dry firing at a gun store is kind of hit or miss. Here's what I'm going to say, and here's what I've seen at kind of every gun store. It's perfectly generally fine. The gun store is going to allow you to dry fire any sort of center fire firearm at all, whether that's a long gun, handgun. If it's center fire, they're probably going to be fine with you dry firing it, practicing the trigger, because that's a huge selling point on a gun for the customer, is going to be how the trigger feels. The only thing, like at the gun store that I work at, that we don't have you dry fire is rim fire. And although most modern rim fire guns are probably fine to be dry fired once or twice, it's just a little bit more of a gray area with rim fires, if you should dry fire them or if you shouldn't. So again, when all else fails, before you just start going and dry firing the gun, just ask if it's all right if you dry fire it. The sixth thing that we're going to talk about is going to be walking away or turning around with the gun that you're looking at. Again, this one was always a no-brainer to me before I started working in the industry, but I guess it's not to a lot of people. So whenever you're looking at a gun, you have to realize that most of the guns are not going to have any sort of trigger safety on them at the moment. It's just going to be a live firearm. And if you put a round in the chamber, you very well could shoot the gun. So this is something that we're all trained on behind the gun counter, and something we're really cautious over. So it really becomes uncomfortable if somebody, kind of turns around like this and, they're looking at the gun, because just simply, I don't know if you're putting a round in the chamber or doing something weird with it or getting ready to run with the gun or so. It's a very stress-inducing way to look at a firearm. And also, if you start walking away to go show your friends, and you start doing anything like that behind the gun counter, us as associates take that as kind of like a sketchy activity going on, and we start trying to kind of keep tabs on that really quickly. So just stay face to face with the person. Try not to move around the counter. The only time that you would move is if you're pointing the firearm on the floor, but just don't turn around whenever we can't see. Although the chances are low that you're going to be loading a loaded round in the chamber, we don't know that, and it becomes, again, a really sketchy situation. The seventh thing that we're going to talk about is asking us as associates to answer your legal advice. So this is something that I think a lot of customers just simply don't know, but us as gun associates, although we may know a lot about firearms laws and legislation, we cannot give out legal advice. And this is kind of obvious again, because if we were to give out legal advice, and it was wrong or not factual at all, and you were to go out and a crime were to happen or something, obviously that could lead back to us. So we do not give out any legal advice. How I kind of run it myself is if somebody asks me a question, I'll give them as much as I can without, actually giving legal advice, but then I'll just simply refer them to a firearm specific attorney or refer them to, a .gov website where they could find these laws and legislation to read over themselves. But just try not to ask too much. I will say that a lot of the times I get asked, hey, I've done this crime, in my past. Hey, I've had a DUI. Will this count? Should I not get a gun? Can I not get a gun? What's the deal? We can't answer that, guys. The best thing I can say is if you ever at all have any crime on your record at all, before you even walk into a gun store, make sure you contact a firearms attorney. And a lot of the times it's something simple like that. They'll literally just tell you right over the phone, hey, don't fill out the paperwork or do fill out the paperwork. We can't at all answer anything, so it's kind of a rough area there. So just kind of, be aware of that. The final eighth thing that we're going to talk about, so the eighth thing on this list is going to be coming in to look at a gun for your significant other. So a lot of people, I don't think, realize the issue today. What we worry about the most in our gun stores is straw purchasing. So we are trained to specifically ask questions and look for, if we are concerned about a straw purchase, what that looks like, and to try to uncover one. So a straw purchase is obviously, to those of you who don't know, is if you're buying a gun for somebody else. So in the state of Pennsylvania, my understanding of the law is that you can gift a firearm to your immediate relatives, and that is your spouse or your son or daughter. So that is going to be the only people that you could actually gift a firearm to. So if I wanted to gift a handgun to, say, if I had a son, I could gift that to him if he was of age and he could own that firearm specifically, and there's not a problem with that. Anybody else, girlfriend, aunt, uncle, cousin, grandma, grandpa, you can't do it. It's a straw purchase. So when you come in, and you start asking questions saying, hey, I want to buy a gun for my wife or for my girlfriend or for my mom or whatever, it already starts kind of ringing bells in our head on why are they not here getting the gun themselves. So we very much understand that your significant other might not want to come into the gun store. They could be very afraid of guns or what have you. But the best thing to do is to get your significant other to just come into the gun store with you. It's a really sketchy situation whenever we're talking about, not buying the gun for you specifically. So the other thing on that is that, to be honest with you, buying a gun is like buying a pair of shoes. If it doesn't fit you right, you're not going to like the gun. So you really need to have that person into the gun store anyways. So again, just kind of bring that person in with you. We can kind of help you out, but be prepared for almost every gun store associate to be very wary and skeptical and probably ask you some more kind of questions seeing the deal here, because it can be a very odd situation. And just know that they're probably going to deny you the sale until that person comes back, or they'll say, hey, we can put this on layaway or something until your significant other actually comes in and picks it up. And that's just covering our end, guys. A lot of people don't know that if I were to fill out paperwork, on a straw purchase, and I didn't know, there was a straw purchase and a crime was committed, I would have to go to court and I could get in trouble. So that's something that we really, really train on and train to know about. So these were my list of 8 things on what not to do as a customer in a gun store. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be putting out a new video here in a little bit on what gun store associates should not do in a gun store, so I hope you guys enjoy that as well. But thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video to come.